Are we live?
Yes, I think we're live.
All right.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone.
Happy Friday.
And happy Thanksgiving. We're just popping up on here because I know we receive a lot of different Q&As about thread, about quilting. So this is a little bit more informal. So if you have any questions, you can just pop it into the chat. Otherwise, we're just gonna start answering. And I guess we'll give a brief introduction of ourselves.
I'm Callista.
And I'm Stephanie. We work for WonderFil Specialty Threads, which is based in Canada. So we're not quite celebrating Thanksgiving over here. We did it last month, but we're happy to pop on here and spend some time with you.
Okay, so we're going to answer some kind of questions that we get all the time, and also talk about some relevant things, like maybe touch on metallic again, because it's been a year since we did the metallic thread talk, and we still get a lot of people asking about like how to use metallic thread and things like that. And so like if there's any questions along the way, today is like very informal, so
Yes.
just kind of like ask along as we kind of like go along here. But maybe we can start off by talking about metallics.
Yeah, I
because
think that's a good.
it's a very relevant topic for the holidays, and
Mhm.
as like, you know, everyone's working on their Christmas projects. So
For sure.
one of the most common questions is, what do you use in your needle when you sew with metallic thread?
Mhm.
And so metallic thread, this is kind of like the metallic thread that we're talking about here. We have several different types at WonderFil, but I think when people in general ask about metallic, they're kind of talking about this type of metallic. And so we always recommend using a top stitch needle, like about a 9014.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A 9014 top stitch needle. It's going to be actually the same size as using like a metallic needle.
Yeah.
So if you have a metallic needle, or if you have a 9014 top stitch needle, that's going to be the size of needle that you actually need when you sew with metallic thread. So the difference is that it's got a bigger eye, which just helps the metallic work a little bit better. So I'll pull this out here. So the eye of the needle, oh, you can kind of see it. Maybe actually against my shirt, it's not too bad.
I think I'm against your
You can
shirt.
kind of see that the hole at the eye is like bigger.
Elongated.
Yeah, and so that's what you need to have when you sew with metallic thread. And so that's the first thing. And if you ever forget where to like find what size needle your thread needs, you can actually always just go to our website, wonderfil.ca. Under the media and resources page, we have the needle sizes listed for all the different threads that we have out there. So talking about needles, the other important thing is not just with metallic threads, but whatever threads you're sewing with, it's always good to check what size needles that you guys have. Hello. It's always good to check what size needle your thread needs. And so you can always check the media and resources link for that, and make sure you switch it out depending on the thread you're using, and change your needles after you're done sewing like a project, or about after like 8 to 10 hours of sewing.
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me. Even if you go to the product page on wonderfil.ca, it'll have the full breakdown of what the thread is, how much yardage, the suggested needle size, and also has a little page of hints and tips as well.
Yep.
So feel free to check those out. I think it's especially helpful for more specialty threads, I think, just so you have a better idea of, what is it made of and how to use it. And so like another aspect of why that's important is because our metallic thread actually has a rayon core. And some of you may already know this because I know we've talked about it a couple times.
Yeah.
But a rayon core essentially ensures two things. One is that the thread is actually very soft. So if any of you have used our metallic thread before, it's very soft. It's not wiry.
It's smooth.
It's smooth. You can tell that it still drapes like this. It doesn't just stick out straight. The second aspect about rayon is that there's zero stretch in it.
That's
right.
right.
So that's extra important for metallic thread because of the way that it's made. If you imagine there's a core in the middle and the metallic is just wound around at the outside of it, that's how metallic thread is made. And so you can imagine if there's any stretch in the core of your thread, guess what's going to start happening?
That wrapping is going to
Yeah.
loosen up and become really catchy.
Exactly. And then when it becomes catchy, that's when you run into issues like
Shredding.
shredding, breakage, especially through the thread path. And the spot that has the sharpest turn in your thread path is the needle, of course. So you can see how the needle and the thread definitely go hand in hand, and why it's so important to have the right needle for the thread.
Yeah. And kind of just like while we're talking about metallic, I love talking about one of these tools. It's called the Ultimate Thread Dispenser. And it's as the holidays come up, it's a great stocking stuffer. But so this is how it works. It's going to come in 2 pieces. And so this is kind of like the pin of the Ultimate Thread Dispenser, and you're just going to put that in here. And then for threads that are more decorative or slippery that can kind of pool at the bottom of your thread, it's great to use the Ultimate Thread Dispenser to control how much thread comes off the spool as you sew, as well as just having the thread feed perpendicular to the spool so it doesn't add any extra twist as you're sewing. So this is going to be the base, and you're going to just pop your spool on there and take the thread and just kind of put it against that pin. There's going to be some little slots here, you can see right here. So your thread will just pop right into one of those slots. And then I'll hold this here. So pretend this is like on your sewing machine. So your thread is going to feed really nice and even and straighten out that metallic as well, because it's coming straight off the spool. It's not adding any extra twist when you pull it off the top. So you can see here.
It also helps prevent pooling or a bunch of thread coming off all at once. And so, like what we were mentioning before, metallic can be a little bit trickier because it has very good memory for a thread. So it can tend to come off in kind of chunks almost if it doesn't have some sort of thread delivery system. We almost always recommend some sort of accessory to help with metallic. So whether it be this Ultimate Thread Dispenser, if you have a thread stand at home, or even if you have something like WonderGuard, all those tools will help metallic or slippery rayon threads or slippery polyester threads to come off the spool a little bit smoother.
Absolutely. So you can see just how smooth this metallic comes off. And even when I relax it a little bit, you can see that a lot of the curl is taken out of that thread. So it's really helpful before it like feeds into your sewing machine.
Do you want to show what happens if it's not pulled off the side like that?
For sure. I would never recommend using your metallic thread on the horizontal spool pin, because you can see when your thread gets pulled, it releases when a little bit more than it needs. You can see that because
it drops every time it comes off the top.
You see. And then it's very easy for the thread to get twisted up just like that. If you have too much extra thread. So having a tool like the Ultimate Thread Dispenser here is really, really handy. So just one more time to demonstrate how that works. We're just going to pop it on this little guy here, the base, right onto here.
You want to make sure that the thread comes past the pin, and then you're putting it into that slot.
Yep. And then, again, you can see it just come off like this, which is really nice. And so let's look at some projects that use metallic thread. So embroidery projects are fantastic. You can actually use our metallic for like freestanding lace, things like that even.
Oh, I think as we're showing this, one of our most common questions we get too is, what do you use in the bobbin for metallic thread?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously you're not probably going to be using metallic thread in your bobbin, but so what is it? So for all the samples we'll be showing, we use a thread called Deco Bob. It's an 80 weight cottonized polyester. So yes, 80 weight is quite fine when you compare it to a 40 weight, but that is what we use. Deco Bob does come in pre-wound bobbins, and what that can actually help a lot with is really consistent tension. You're not going
Yeah.
to have as many of those like knotting issues, or I mean, while we're talking about metallic especially, tension
Yeah.
really can affect a metallic thread. So
Yeah.
having very even tension will help that when you're using
Also,
it
the
for-
deco bob is really lightweight. It's an 80
Yeah.
weight, so it reduces the bulk
Yeah, look
in your
how
bobbin. So
flexible.
you can see how clean this metallic stitched. It's perfect from the front, the embroidery, and then on the back using that deco bob, you can see how clean it is, and you can barely see the thread of deco bob back there because it's just so fine.
Mm-hmm. And we purposely finish a lot of our samples with the back open so
Mhm.
that people can see and feel. Like if you ever see us at a show or something, definitely stop by and say hi, because a lot of our samples have an open back to show the deco bob on the back. So in this case with the Spotlight, our metallic thread, we also use deco bob in the back.
Yeah, exactly. And so just speaking about kind of like pre-wound bobbins, we have some bobbins here,
Yes, we do.
I believe. So if you don't know, bobbins come, or like the standard size of bobbins kind of come in 3 sizes. There's a class 15 size, there's an L size, and there's also an M size bobbin. So the M size bobbin is going to be kind of like the most common size for long arms, as well as the L size bobbin. And then there's also class 15 and L size bobbins, which are really good for kind of just like your standard machine.
I would say from the front, it's definitely difficult to tell. So I'm just going to hold up this diagram so it's easier to see. So a class 15 and an L actually are the same in diameter. So when you're looking straight on like before, they look identical. Where you're going to see the difference is the height. So class 15 bobbins are always a little bit taller than the L size that you see here. And the red and the blue, the class 15 and the L, is what you'd be using your domestic machine. Or if you're like a Bernina user, it'll be like a different size bobbin that you have. But those are the 2 main sizes for domestic sewing machines.
Yeah, so this is what Stephanie was talking about. I have a class 15 and an L size bobbin, and side by side they look pretty much the same. But then when I turn it to the side, you can actually see that the L size is shorter than the class 15. You see this cream one is shorter. Or sorry, the cream one is taller than this gray one here. So it's just a difference in height, but the face of them look the same. So if you don't know what your bobbin size is for your machine, you can download our bobbin guide on our website and just print it out. And when you print it out, you just want to measure these squares on the bottom to see if they match 1 inch or 1 centimeter. So then you know you've printed it in the right scale, and then you can just drop your bobbin on top of these to measure them and make sure that they're the right size. And the other great thing about this is because it's 80 weight, you can actually have so much thread on here.
Yeah.
So for the class 15, for example, you have about 135 yards, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, of thread that's on each bobbin on here.
Yeah, so
And
you get a
then
lot of mileage with one bobbin, so it's so nice for embroidery and stuff like that too when you're really just going through those bobbins quickly.
yeah, we have some people that said they recently used the 80 weight and love it, so that's always
Yeah.
awesome to hear. And then this is the M size bobbin. So if you ever have like a long arm and you want to pick up some M size bobbins, we have those available as well. And with the M size bobbins, there's even more thread. There's actually 210 yards per bobbin on here. That's almost as much as some of our little spools, if not more.
Yeah.
Because the thread is so fine, so much can fit on there. So you can think about it like it really reduces the bulk in like your quilting and your embroidery and your seams if you're piecing with deco bob. So always deco bob in the bobbin.
Yeah, and not only that is if you're doing quilting with it and if it's something that you're going to see the bottom of in the finished product, when you use a finer thread, it's going to blend in a lot more into the background. If you either don't want people to see like you're quilting exactly, or if you just want it to blend into your patterned fabric or your plain fabric, whatever the case might be, it'll actually just seep in and blend in much nicer. I don't know if we have any finished quilts over here. But
let's see.
Is this one?
Is one a finished quilt?
I'm not sure.
No, we
we leave
we-
a lot of our samples open, but essentially it'll blend in really nicely to the back of your quilt. So that's also like another reason,
Yeah.
especially for the long armors out there. We of course have them in these solid color packs, but like the one Calista was holding up, this one's assorted, and so we have this is the basic colorway, but we have a lot of different options for people to like try different colors and test out the deco bob on the long arm. It's definitely a go-to, I would say, for even a lot of people in the industry that we've talked to. It's a very handy little thing to have in your sewing room.
And also, it's not just about like the convenience of like not winding your own bobbin, which is always nice, but it's actually that they give you better tension as well because they come perfectly wound. Like they're going to give you really even tensions that actually kind of enhances like your end result. It looks really even. It's a nice sewing experience. So it's not like the convenience is obviously a big plus, but it's actually the fact that it gives you really nice even tension as well. So for the people that are just joining us, we're kind of going along and answering questions along the way. This is an open Q&A.
Yeah.
So if anyone has questions, just throw them in the comments. We have some questions that people have kind of like always asked us that we're kind of just going over right now, but we'd be happy to answer any kind of additional questions that people have as well. So another question that we get, let's move to a different machine that we don't talk about as often, which is the serger.
Right.
So a lot of people have sergers and do awesome stuff with the serger, and they're always like, what thread from WonderFil would I use if I'm serging?
I think there's also like two main applications for serging, and especially after the sewing machine conventions we attended this year and also like Houston, I feel like there's definitely a resurgence in serging.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about like utility serging, but really like decorative serging and what people can do to play with their serger, because really your serger is also another very complicated machine. You can put 4 spools, even more sometimes on there, and you can achieve many different types of stitches.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we can start with, do you want to start with decorative serging or something?
Yeah, we can start with some decorative serging. I actually
some
have a
winners.
nice little like Christmas pillowcase right now because the holiday season is upon us. So here's some of that metallic thread we talked about earlier getting used in this embroidery. But on the side here, actually what we did that's really fun that a lot of people might not think to do, because I always think about sergers just doing it on the edge, but here's some like nice little pleats that we kind of created using the serger and a heavier weight thread like the 8 weight here.
Yeah, it's just a cover stitch.
Yep, and we just did the 8 weight and the loopers to create this effect, and
one is a narrow cover stitch and one's a wide cover stitch. And like Calista said, you can just use regular thread through your needle, and then you can really play around with all the fun threads through your loopers. I mean, a major highlight of sergers is that they can take threads that are over 12 weight.
Yes.
So like a brief overview, like on the scale of thread weight, 100 weight is your finest thread. The finest weight thread, the heaviest weight thread that we have is a 3 weight, but the magic number is 12. So 12 weight is the thickest thread that will go through the eye of the needle. Anything thicker than that, you got to do couching, bobbin work, or you put it in your serger. So a serger can really accept like really diverse threads for what you want to use it for. So whether it's more like this and you want to see it, or if you're like even serging on like organza or something like very delicate, you can put 80 weight or 100 weight in your serger. And I think a lot of people don't know that, but the serger is probably the most versatile in terms of like what type of threads it can accept and what you can put into your machine and stitch out with.
Another thing is like here's actually the thread. We have this cute little Christmas pack right now, but we have dazzle thread. That is what we used in that sample that we just showed you here. So this comes in like some fun Christmas colors.
Here's a close-up of what Dazzle looks like. So this is a variegated Dazzle called Starry Night Dazzle. Here's the top of it, so you can see. And then this is just regular Dazzle, which is a solid color with metallic in it. So it's also really pretty. Here's the top of it, so you can see it sparkle right there.
And here's some fun holiday projects that you can do with these types of heavyweight threads
Mhm.
besides the serger as well. I don't know if you guys have ever tried couching before, but this is like a little ornament placemat
Yeah.
that one of our teammates made, and she just used metallic threads pretty much throughout this whole thing. She used like the Razzle and Dazzle 8-weight and then just stitched using some decorative stitching on top to hold those down to create a little ornament placemat. So that's another great way to use 8-weight threads. So if you have a couching foot, then you can try this technique out. And if you don't have a couching foot, maybe that's something you can think about in the future, like would be a fun new technique to try out using those heavier weight threads. And you can kind of create a really fun look.
I think actually Sam was able to achieve a few of these stitches with a open toe applique foot, because I can see that it's not completely, uniform throughout. So if you want to test it out, even having the open toe applique foot, which I think most of you have, you can definitely do something like this. And she even twisted some strands of Dazzle together here and here. If you want, you can braid it. You can make tassels with it. So this was originally designed to be a class that we taught at a few guilds, just so people could play with 8-weight in their machine.
Yep.
So they could play with the different decorative stitches, because let's be honest, I think zigzag or the buttonhole stitch is probably the most common. But when do you use stitches like this, right? Or when do you use stitches like, all these like extra fun ones over there? So it's definitely a nice excuse to complete a project that looks like this, and then also play with some of your decorative stitches, because the machines have so many.
Exactly. And then if you ever have like kind of just some boring old fabric at home that you want to like totally decorate with thread, this is just a black piece of fabric that we ended up almost creating like our own pattern and design on by just couching in straight lines and playing with those decorative stitches that Stephanie talked about that everyone has hundreds of on their machine and no one ever uses. And so this is a great excuse to finally use some of those decorative stitches on there, so you can really see how fun that is using that 8-weight thread. So besides having it on your serger, you can also use it on your machine, but in kind of more of a couching technique is where you would use it, because it wouldn't fit through the eye of your needle on your sewing machine.
Yeah.
So that's another one. And then also, if you have a wash away stabilizer, you can actually create this. This is a couched little infinity scarf here. So I can show you. Now I'm going to model this as well. But that's like a fun little project that you can make. And this is entirely thread. So what you would do with this is you just sew your you sew a grid essentially onto washable stabilizer and sew that into a loop. And you can see these are all just couched, but on a washable stabilizer. And once you wash that away, it becomes this infinity scarf, which is super cool, actually.
Yeah.
So that's another fun project that you can use. And because the Razzle and Dazzle are rayon, it's still quite soft and it's not scratchy, even if you want to wear that. Here's another Christmas placemat we made with that Razzle and Dazzle, but in some more festive colors.
And I think we should mention, do you want to grab that Dazzle pack poster right there, the blue one?
Sure.
This pack here is actually exactly all the colors that was used on this placemat than this original placemat we had shown you. So if you want to play with it or just achieve like a similar look, we have corresponding packs for each placemat.
Oh yeah, I think we used this gold and red one for this one. So these are some fun easy Christmas projects that you can work on and whip up in like just an afternoon.
I think they're so cute.
Super, super cute. Okay, so what other questions do we have so far? So Someone asked, do you have a recommended tension for the pre-wound deco bob bobbins when using the TOA gauge? We don't really use the TOA gauge in our office too much. They're all kind of pre-wound the same way from the factory, and then I don't think we've ever tried using the gauge to test what that is. But if you actually send us an email, we can actually get back to you with an answer to that question.
We can look further into that for sure.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about some metallic threads as well. We showed you earlier we have one type of metallic thread that looks like this. And we also have a heavyweight metallic thread. So sometimes people ask if we have different weights of metallic. And so this would actually be one of the different weights of the metallic we have called Glamour. So this is a 12 weight. It's like the little sister of Dazzle. It's almost the exact same type of thread, but because it's 12 weight, it actually goes through the eye of your sewing machine. So you can use like 116 needle for this type of thread.
Yeah, Glamour was actually I would say it's relatively new amongst all our thread lines, and it actually was birthed because people really liked using Dazzle, but like I mentioned earlier, they couldn't put it through their machine unless it was like couching or something like that.
Yeah.
They actually wanted to do quilting with it or other decorative work. So that's why Glamour came to be. And I wish you could see some of these metallic threads in person because I know it never quite shows the same through a camera.
Yeah.
But that is what Glamour is right there.
And I have another great little holiday project that you guys can work on. So this is actually a little Christmas embroidery that we did and stuck on a card. So if you're thinking about making some Christmas cards, that's a fun way to kind of turn your sewing into like a Christmas card. So this is all embroidered with the Glamour. And so you can see with that 12 weight thread, because it's thicker, it really pops the design a lot more and has that little bit of sparkle in it too, which is really fun and just kind of works for those festive things that people make around this time of year.
And like we said earlier, any of our spools that are this shape will all fit onto the ultimate thread dispenser. So you can see too, because rayon's quite slippery, I don't know if you can see the base of this thread, there is a little bit of pooling that's happening right there. So when you're sewing with it, having again like something like the ultimate thread dispenser that is kind of like a lazy Susan for your thread, while it turns your thread, it's just releasing the perfect amount like this. You can also use it for any spool that looks the same shape as this.
Yeah. And then another thing is people ask, what do you use Invisifil for? Why do you want to use such a fine weight thread?
Yeah, this is almost on like the whole other side of the spectrum now. Yeah. We're at 100 weight thread. That's Invisifil.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for me, I think there's like so many different possibilities. If I were to generalize, I think the main one is anywhere where you don't want to see the thread, I would say.
Absolutely.
That's very general, but like Invisifil is one of my favorites for sure because there's so many use cases for it.
Yeah, so pretty much it's the logic makes sense. It's super fine, so you're not going to see it a lot. So when you use these lighter weight threads is because you don't want to see the thread. So applications that Invisifil would be good for, the 100 weight, would be hand or machine applique. So a lot of hand appliqueurs love to use silk. Invisifil is the same weight as silk, so it's just as fine. And I like that it has like a texture to it as well. I find it helps kind of just like grip a little better, and it's like a little less slippery in my opinion. And hand and machine applique, English paper piecing. So when you're doing your whip stitches between your EPP blocks, you don't see the thread at all. And because the thread is fine, it doesn't add to your seams. So your blocks are going to lay flatter.
Yeah, I think what I want to add to this is DecoBob and Invisifil are made very similar. They're both called cottonized polyesters. And what is that really? It's kind of like an industry term, but essentially it means that it's a polyester. It's a polyester thread that's been treated so that there's no shrink or stretch, and we've actually mattified it a lot more compared to like a trilobal polyester, which will be very shiny, which is if you can imagine like polyester thread used for embroidery, that's typically a trilobal. But Deco Bob and Invisifil are both cottonized, so once it is on your quilt or on something that's like cotton based or even wool based, something that's not shiny, this thread is going to blend in a lot more and sink into the fabric much nicer.
Exactly.
And
So besides so let's go over again. Applique, hand or machine, English paper piecing, quilting is a really big one. So when you want, especially if you're doing like a quilt that has like a lot of colors and you're worried about kind of switching colors a lot of time, or you don't want the thread to really show across like the pattern that you pieced, Invisifil is great for that because it kind of just is like that subtle quilting in the background, but like not super in your face, and you can't really tell what color you're using.
Not quite trapunto, but it can give you like a similar effect because essentially your thread is disappearing because it's just holding down the fabric, but you're not actually physically seeing the thread. Whereas if you're quilting with something like this, you know you're quilting to see the thread. This one you're more quilting to either see the texture, or you don't want to interrupt your pattern design. So for example, I would say especially for like foundation paper piecing, where the quilt pattern design is one of the main standout features, and you don't want thread to make it more busy. Invisifil will really be nice in that circumstance. And I would say the third one too is if you have like a very patterned fabric, like if you're using like Liberty fabric or something that's like really heavy in plaid or has a lot of motifs on it, again, you don't want to add thread to it to make it more busy. If that's the look that you're going for and you don't want to make it more busy, Invisifil is a really, really good option. And yes, definitely what Cindy said here, stitch in the ditch is a major application of
for Invisifil.
For Invisifil.
Because it's hard to stay in the ditch sometimes, and when you pop out, that's the most annoying thing if you see the thread when you pop out of the ditch. But with Invisifil, even when you, well, one, it's going to be easier to stay in the ditch because it's finer, and the second thing is even if you pop out of the ditch, you're not going to notice it as much because the thread is so fine. So we call it stitching in the neighborhood, actually, because you don't even have to stay in the ditch the whole time. And you're going to have a really good time ditching with this. And I know people also like to bind with Invisifil, hand or machine bind, because again, you don't see the thread too much. So it's really nice when you're doing your binding with that. And then we talked about lightweight threads earlier in the serger, and Invisifil is definitely one you can put in the serger as well. You definitely want to like tighten up the stitch a little bit so it's not super wide, but you can use this for lightweight fabrics because you want to match the thread kind of with the weight of the fabric. So if it's not a heavy fabric like organza or tulle or things like that where you want to create a rolled hem on those type of materials, Invisifil is a fantastic match for like things like that. Oh yeah, chiffon and all that kind of stuff.
I just thought about it like another use, and we actually have the sample right there, so I'm not sure why we forgot. But embroidery right here.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so you can actually embroider with Invisifil as well. So let me start actually right here. So we're gonna start on the third tier right here and right here. So this is Silco. I believe it's a 35 weight, and this is Polyfast, which is a 40 weight. And so they're quite similar in terms of weight. And you can see on this bigger design, you can see the whole motif. It's very clear. But as you get smaller for both of these, the design actually gets quite muddled and you lose a lot of the detail, and it also becomes quite thick. So this is like the 35 weight, and you can definitely see right there it's really thick. It's not nice to like go that small with a thread that's too thick. So what you can start exploring is potentially going down in your thread weight if you're wanting a smaller design. So on the bottom two here we have Deco Bob and we have Invisifil. So like I said, you're kind of choosing the thread for a certain purpose, because if you look at the big designs, of course it doesn't look very good because you see all the gapping in his shield. I'll bring it closer. You can see all that gapping in his shield. It's not really giving you that full effect, but what it can do is if you're wanting a smaller motif, look at the detail that you're still able to achieve. And if you go a size smaller, look at it, that's Invisifil. So I would say for monogramming or
lettering
exactly. If you're wanting to do those like smaller designs on your embroidery
that
machine,
require more detail as well.
exactly, you can actually just decrease the size of your design and also use a smaller thread.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If you're wanting to increase the size and you want to use a heavier thread, I would say the main thing is make sure that your number of stitches is not changing. So just keep that fixed and then increase the scale of your design. And you'll be able to play with a lot of different thread weights in your embroidery machine.
Yeah, and another thing you can embroider with the lighter weight threads like Invisifil or Decobob is like freestanding lace.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah,
if you
for
ever
sure.
want to do kind of like soft, drapey, almost like a doily like
Yeah.
freestanding lace, then Decobob and Invisifil are really fantastic for that.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so I think we have another question, which is, what are your personal favorite threads, like me and you?
Ooh, okay.
So I think you have one that you use a lot. So
I think because I'm surrounded by thread every day, there's definitely thread that I like to look at, and then there's thread that I just use a ton. I think my favorite thread to look at is probably like D-Twist or like Starry Night Dazzle. I love variegated threads. So for example, let me grab. So this is like Starry Night Dazzle. I was showing you a different color earlier. And then D-Twist is also a twisted thread like this, but it's a 30 weight, I believe.
20.
It's a 20 weight.
Yeah.
But it's so nice in embroidery. We have some embroidery of that over there too. So that'd be my favorite thread to probably look at. But my bread and butter is I really love handwork actually. So my go-to thread is almost always eleganza. So this is just in like a little build your own box set that you can make on our site. You can build your own box of 9. But eleganza is available in 3 weights. So it's available in the 3 weight, the 5 weight, and the 8 weight. So definitely the heavier ones that wouldn't go through the eye of your needle. But this is what it looks like. So it's a pearl cotton. If it comes in the ball, it's our 8 weight thread. And I just love stitching with it. I learned how to sew first on the machine. And I think I might have done more picking than sewing, to be honest. But when I found out, when I started learning how to do some handwork and like hand embroidery, I really fell in love with actually wool embroidery. And so I find it like very forgiving and like very relaxing, and I can watch TV at the same time. So I really love eleganza. It's like very soft and smooth. And now we have, geez, we have a lot of colors of eleganza. I don't even think I can count. Maybe somewhere near 400 colors. Probably around 400 colors of eleganza. So there's just so many options, and you can do anything. The world is your oyster when you're stitching with eleganza.
I think for me personally, I do a lot of I do more like foundation paper piecing. So I love Decobob for that. So Decobob is my go-to. What's great about it is because it's an 80 weight, it's thin, you can actually reduce your stitch length to like the one I'm doing right now. I reduced it down to like 1.4 stitch length. So I get a really, really, really tight seam, and the pieces still lay really, really flat. Oh, Stephanie's gonna bring over one of my work in progresses. But
this is one of the new patterns we got.
Yeah, I'm working on the tomatoes from Violet Craft. So I've been paper piecing with the Decobob in there, and I love how I can just get like really crispy, like sharp, tiny points on it, even with such a small stitch length. It just like creates a really tight seam and keeps it all flat. So where all the points come together, it still lays really flat as well. So you can kind of see how like sharp,
yeah, you can see
all these lines are, and that just gives me so much satisfaction. And the paper is easy to rip out after as well. So Decobob is like my favorite for FPP. And then if I'm doing like quilting or any like stitching, I love to use spaghetti. Spaghetti is our 12 weight, 100% Egyptian cotton thread. And so it's it's a thicker type of thread because it's a 12 weight. So it's going to be similar to this like glamour we have here. And it just really kind of like pops. And I love just like doing like details on like bags and stuff like that with that 12 weight thread. Or just, I don't usually quilt the entire quilt in 12 weight because I feel like that's
Quite
a
heavy.
lot
Yeah.
to look at, but I love adding like extra details in a quilt with the 12 weight because I just love the look of like a boulder stitch, and there's something really satisfying about like
It
using
is
the
very
12 weight.
I agree, it is very satisfying. I think we forgot to mention too, all our cottons are
Mhm.
double gassed,
Yeah.
every cotton. So our eleganza, the spaghetti, the confetti, Athena, all of it's double gassed. And so what does that mean? I think
Mhm.
that's another term that can be quite confusing. So
Yeah.
do you want to explain it a little while
Yeah,
we're
so
talking about
double
spaghetti?
yeah, so double gassed is a process in which we treat the thread because all cotton thread is linty. There's nothing that we can do about the lintiness of the thread, but what we can do is try to reduce the amount of lintiness that's on the thread. There's no way that we're going to remove it 100% when you spin the fibers together to create this cotton thread. So we pass our thread through like a tunnel that
Yeah.
kind of gently burns off the lint. So that's what double gassing is. So we do this process twice. So we burn off 80% the first time, we go back in and clean up another 80% of what was remaining. So it ends up being a really, really clean cotton thread, and there's no extra residue or anything like that on the thread at all to like glue that lint down. We just like
Exactly.
remove it the best we
Yeah.
can.
So when you are doing like this bold stitching, especially if you're
Mhm.
doing like contrast stuff, like if you had this on black, it's very evident whether the thread is clean or not, right? Which
Yeah.
is why it's so important. And then also, of course, it's better for your machine because there's less lint, then you have to do,
Mhm.
less work by cleaning up all the extra
Yeah.
cotton lint that's in your machine. So yeah, double gassing is amazing. And we're the only thread company that does it twice. So
Yeah.
definitely added benefit.
I saw you brought some samples over to show.
Yeah, so when did we get this? We got this
A
at
year ago.
Houston
A
last
year ago.
year.
Yep.
And it's wool applique. So we also do sell wool at WonderFil. It has two other companion threads called Alana and Athena. One's a wool thread and one's a cotton thread. And actually, every color of wool exactly matches the Alana and Athena. So if you're quilting with it or while you're doing your wool applique, you don't have to worry about color match because it's a 100% match. But anyways, Callista and I have been deep diving into this in the past few weeks because it's so cute. But it's wool applique project right here. So this is one block. Originally, I think it was block of the month last year.
Yeah, this is
Right.
from Midway Wool.
This is from Midway Wool. It's so cute. And like what I was mentioning earlier, you can play with all these different types of weight. So right here, this is like a 5 weight, and then you can put 8 weight here. And I think we also have like dazzle on the bee on all our little bee wings. So we're currently assembling this at our office. It's kind of becoming a project after work, but I just wanted to bring these over. Do you want to hang on to one
Sure.
of those to just show all the different fun things you can do with it, because we're following the instructions and then we're just adding even more thread to it because we have access to such beautiful thread. So we're really packing these guys up with tons of thread, and this is one of the reasons why I love eleganza so much. And there's dazzle and starry night dazzle on there
Can you
too.
show the variegated dazzle? I think one of your stitches showed it like really prettily.
This
You
one?
did it around the edge of the
Yeah, so
strawberry.
I'm currently doing the strawberry, so it looks a little plain right now, but it might be a little bit hard to see. But there's starry night dazzle on the edge of the strawberry, so you can kind of see the texture that it gives to here. And I like the variation. You get metallic sometimes, you get pink sometimes, you get red sometimes. So yeah, super fun.
Yeah. So again, for those people that are just joining us, we have kind of just like a ongoing Q&A
Yeah.
session. So we have some questions that people have asked us ahead of time that we're kind of just working our way through. But there's also kind of questions that maybe you guys will have as we go along. So just kind of pop them into the comments as we go. And yeah, we'll kind of keep sharing. I think one question is also what kind of needles do you use when you use eleganza? Because we talked
Oh,
about
yes.
kind of like the machine threads and the metallic threads using like a top stitch needle. But for hand embroidery threads, maybe you can kind of talk about what you're using currently for that.
Sure. So we recently started collaborating with Bowen. So we're using Bowen needles right now. If you're not familiar, Bowen is a needle company from France, and they have many, many, many different types of needles. And so while we were testing and playing with them, luckily we were able to like narrow it down to I think 8 needles that will work with the threads for different purposes, and we have them all labeled on our website too to make it a little bit more clear, because I know when you see just like a pile of different needles you're like, what the heck do I do with it? But for example, we have right here they're called sharps, or the long. They kind of imitate what we might also call them milliners. So this is what it looks like right here. And we do have a number 3 and a number 1. The 3 is smaller. So needles sometimes follow the same sizing as thread. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. The larger the number, the smaller the needle in most cases. So the number 3 would fit your 8 weight. And then the number 1, you can use it with your number 5 weight right there.
And you use 2 types of needles.
I do use 2 types
when
of
you
needles.
do your hand embroidery. So when you do hand embroidery, what type of needles are they, and why do you use the 2 different types?
Yes. So let me talk a little bit more about this. So as you can see, this needle is the same width from top to bottom. So this is actually quite important when you're doing any sort of wrapped stitching. So whether you're doing bullion knots, cast on, or French knots, you're going to actually have a much nicer time pulling your needle through the wrapped thread when it's completely the same diameter from top to bottom. Otherwise, you might be straining your fingers a little bit more. And while there's so many repetitive motions in hand stitching, you really want to make sure that you're choosing the right needle so you're not straining your hand over time, because it's not something that you're going to feel immediately, but it can be kind of a bad thing for your hand muscles over time. So yeah, definitely French knots, bullion knots, cast on, anything where you're wrapping the needle and needing to pull it through. Definitely look for a needle that's the same from top to bottom, same diameter from top to bottom.
And then chenilles.
Yes, the second needle I'll mention here is we also have a few different sizes of it too for the different threads. On the packaging, it says tapestry, but it's also chenille. So it's not, the ones from Bowen are actually not as dull as what we would know as a tapestry needle.
Yeah.
I think that's just the word that they use for chenille. But you can kind of see here, we have the different sizes for the different thread weights here. And a chenille is always a little bit wider in the eye, and it also is longer. So that's why when you're doing the French knots, chenille may not be the most ideal, or if you're doing like a wrapped stitch. Also, chenille needles tend to be a little bit shorter than the long ones.
So I can hold up
yeah,
so you can see
Yeah.
the length difference.
yeah. Until you, especially the length from the eye to the tip of the needle. So there's a little less real estate for wrapping stitches on a chenille anyways, but then it also is a little bit more difficult to pull through. So I'm just going to grab the largest size of chenille so you guys can see it better. You can see that the eye is actually much wider than the base of the needle where the tip is. So that's what I mean by straining your hand if you're using a needle that has different widths from top to bottom. But anyways, the chenille is still very nice for doing more like single stitch type stitches, like a blanket stitch, back stitch, stem stitch, chain stitch. Of course, you can still use a chenille with no issue. You don't have to use such a long needle.
Some chain stitches, because it's nice when you only need to go down a little bit and then come back up. You don't want to use like a super long needle for stitches that kind of have that type of work involved with it. Yeah, so that's kind of like an
so I would say that's the two main ones for the decorative stitching aspect. Let me just quickly take a look through here. We also have, did I grab all the needles? Do you have some over here? Okay. Yeah. Okay. We also have some betweens over here too, and our extra small sharps needles. So they're also different sizes here. And these little shorter ones are nicer for applique, or we even have shorter betweens for hand quilting. So all of these are handwork, for handwork, of course, and they all have different uses. But I would definitely say we tried our best to cover the basis of hand quilting, hand applique, wool applique, and just hand embroidery in general, whether that is on wool or cotton or muslin or whatever medium you choose to stitch on. But we definitely tried to narrow it down for you guys and make it more clear. And you don't have to take notes on everything because I think it's all on our website anyways. But we do have 8 different needles, and we're like super excited to now carry Bowen, because I know sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get your hands on some hand needles a little bit more consistently, like
for
that.
sure.
Yeah.
I think one thing I noticed earlier that we forgot to mention when we were talking about the serging thread is kind of like we talked about the fun stuff, but we forgot to talk about like the really practical serger threads. So what are the practical serger threads?
Right. So we brought a few spools over. I think what most people are familiar with is like a 40 weight polyester.
Like all-purpose polyester.
Just all-purpose polyester. You can use it for garment sewing, serging. You can serge with this on all of your needles and loopers if you really wanted to. But we also have a different thread that we wanted to mention. It's called Soft Lock, and it's a really interesting thread. So are you guys familiar with woolly nylon, or have you heard of woolly nylon? It was really popular for, I think, clothing because, one, it's like stretchy.
It has some stretch to it.
It has some stretch to it. But the downside of it is that you can't iron it.
Yes.
Which is a pretty big con if you're putting it on clothes. Exactly. So you can't iron woolly nylon. So we created something called Soft Lock. And Soft Lock is a woolly poly, and you can iron it. So it's really amazing for clothing. And it's a very interesting thread, even when you are able to feel it. So it actually has loft in it. I'm not sure if it's very clear from the video, but it's actually a really airy thread. It's not like spaghetti, if you've like felt spaghetti in your hand before. It's really airy. If I show you the end of it, where it's like a little
fluffy.
Where it's a little bit more loose, you can kind of understand what I mean. There's some fluff in there. And so if you're making garments and this is in your loopers,
sewing on knits and things like that have like some stretch and stuff like that,
it makes your seams really soft and like not scratchy,
and it covers super well as well.
Yeah, it has a really amazing coverage because of that loftiness to it too.
Yeah.
And so with all these benefits, you can iron it. It's softer on your skin if you're making clothes. It has really nice coverage. And really, you can use this for decorative elements too, because I think we have
50 colors.
60 colors.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 60 colors of Soft Lock. So I think for serging, there's typically not that many exciting colors anyways. Unfortunately, especially when it came to like woolly nylon, maybe you got some basics and some bold colors, but we actually have a lot of colors of Soft Lock.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really great thread for doing your serging, especially for garments and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for the utility thread, those are definitely the two that we would highlight.
Yes.
There's the all-purpose 40 weight and Soft Lock.
Exactly.
And we do have some sets as well if you don't want to choose like different colors. If you wanted like all beige or all black, we do have sets on our website that's 2 spools of soft lock paired with 2 spools of designer, so it can fit your machine. It can like go into everything. And you don't have to buy multiples. You can just buy the little pack of it.
Exactly. Another question that we got was, do we have color cards, or like how can I see all the colors in your range? So if you go to our website wonderfil.ca, in the products and then under media and resources, you can actually find the digital color cards for all of our different thread lines. But of course, digital color cards, we try our best, but with everyone's monitors and different types of computers, it's never 100% accurate. So if you are interested in color cards or picking up some color cards so you can like see the actual thread that's available and the colors that are available, then we do have real thread color charts that are available on our website right now. We actually have a special going on with the color cards because we think it's so important that you kind of have these to refer to when you're picking threads for your project,
especially if you have like a favorite thread line.
Yeah, so for Black Friday, we're actually doing 50% off on our color cards on our website. So if you've ever thought about like picking up some color charts and just like having this handy tool available, I would actually
highly recommend
that.
And like I said, there's like over 400 colors of elegance. So these color charts really come in handy.
Yeah. So you can like, it's a lot easier to like match the color and just have this kind of like in your mind when you're thinking about what to use for your next project as well. I feel like it helps with the creative process, being able to see all these different colors in person. So I quite like color charts. They're a handy tool.
Yeah, especially with the real thread on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not sure if some of you may know this, but so again, 1 year ago in Houston, we actually expanded our 50 weight cotton line colorways. So we used to have 60 colors of confetti. So confetti is our 50 weight double gassed cotton. And we expanded it by double. So now there's 120 colors. If you're into more like modern and vivid colors, there's way more selection from confetti now too. And another fun thing that we launched at Houston this year was another thread line actually called Athena. And we haven't really touched on that yet, but Athena is a 60 weight cotton. So it's actually a little bit finer than confetti, but it's amazing for piecing. It's really nice.
Like traditional piecing.
Yeah, like traditional piecing. Your seams will still lay really flat. And even if you like to do English paper piecing with cotton instead of like a polyester, because you can use Decobomb and Invisifil, but if you want like cotton instead, you can of course use Athena. Athena's very nice. It's become one of my favorite threads too. As someone that doesn't always sew in the sewing machine, Athena is absolutely really nice to use. Yeah, very nice.
One thing we forgot to mention earlier when you were talking about how much you love Eleganza.
Oh yeah.
Another thing you can do with it is you can actually do sashiko. So this is sashiko done with the Eleganza pearl cotton thread. And I just love the look of it because Eleganza has just like a really nice round shape to it. So it just sits on fabric really, really nicely. And like Stephanie said, we have like over 400 colors now, just to give you an idea of kind of like the selection of Eleganza that's available.
Let me take this out.
This is just to kind of like
hold everything together. Oh, right there.
Yeah. Okay. To just kind of show you the selection that's available. Like these are just some of the solid colors that we have. Yeah. And that is just so fun to like have in your sewing room if you ever want all of them. We have sets that have all the colors in it.
Yeah, this is the WonderFil Eleganza
Yeah.
solids.
But we love this for sashiko as well. So if you ever like have some sashiko patterns and you have eleganza in your drawer, you can definitely use it for this as well. And we talked about the dazzle earlier, which was that 8-weight rayon with metallic. You can actually use that for sashiko as well.
Yeah, all our full collections, which is available in every thread line, which also just happened, is available right now. And if you're like an Invisifil lover, because I saw a few people in the comments, we also have like Invisifil full collection right here.
Yeah.
And Deco Bob and all the fun thread lines. So
oh, we have some people that say they love the Athena already.
Oh my god, yeah, Athena is so good. I agree.
All right.
And I think, do we have a little sampler packs of Athena?
No, not yet.
Not yet. So you can buy Athena individual, and in the future we may, release maybe a few spools together so people can try.
Yeah.
But Athena also, Athena has existed for a long time, just not on spools that look like this. But if you want to buy Athena in packs from Petra Prinz or who do we have? We have two of
Susan Smith.
Susan Smith. We have some really nice Athena packs, and the spools are compatible to go on your sewing machine, of course. So, yeah, those are also great options if you wanted to try Athena at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Someone asked if Invisifil only comes in the cone size. So this is the size that we showed earlier. This is about 2,700 yards of thread. So when people are like, oh, is there a bigger size when I use it on my long arm? This has actually got just as much thread as some of our long arm cones of thread, which is really crazy because Invisifil just is so small that so much thread can fit on this size spool. Just as a comparison, this is the 12 weight. So this is 100 weight and this is 12 weight. And this is 300 yards of thread, whereas this is almost 2,700 yards of thread.
Yeah.
And it's on the same spool. Just so much more thread will fit on here because it's fine. And when you're using that heavy stuff, you can really see how much space it can take up because this is about 9 times as much thread on this one as this one has. And Invisifil does come in one size even larger, which is I think
10,000.
a 10,000 yard cone.
Yeah,
so
10,000.
you're truly an Invisifil lover and you want Invisifil forever, then you can pick up one of those 10,000 yard cones. But for people that are doing smaller projects, we have these packs with the mini spools of Invisifil in there, and they're fantastic for doing like English paper piecing projects, hand applique, machine applique projects where you just want like a bit of thread, but like obviously not like a ridiculous amount of thread in
especially
there.
I picked up some of the more muted color packs. We have some brighter ones too. So if there's any projects where you're like, oh, I'm not going to use a ton of lime green, that you can get like a smaller pack like that too.
Exactly.
So there are more colorful packs. I think we have 12 different variations of Invisifil mini packs.
Yeah.
And we also have, of course, the full collection over there. So
yeah. Does anyone have any more questions? We kind of ran through a few of the ones that we prepared, but Stephanie and I are thinking about doing some more lives throughout the day, today and throughout the weekend as well, to just kind of like hang out and answer thread questions. We realize people just have so many questions about thread, are so interested in thread and want to learn more. So yep. If anyone has any more questions that they'd like to ask, please go ahead and do so. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up. We might send a schedule out, so make sure you check out our newsletters and follow us on social media, because throughout the rest of the day, we might come back on for 1 or 2 more lives today to just kind of hang out, answer more questions, and throughout the weekend as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I think what's the best way if they have questions prepared? Just to hang on to them and join us in the live, I think?
Yeah, just join us in the live, or maybe if you can just DM us on our Instagram, we'll have someone collecting questions.
Yep.
And maybe we'll see you a little bit. Oh, we have one more question. They want to make laces, insertion laces. Can you I'm just gonna look up quickly what an insertion lace is because I'm not super familiar with that. And then I'll be able to answer your question. Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a
Oh.
delicate lace. So if you want to do kind of more of that type of delicate lace,
Yes.
then you definitely want to use Deco Bob or Invisifil, that 80 or 100 weight thread, because it's fine and it'll kind of like heirloom sewing, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Using that lighter weight thread is the perfect choice for things like that. It'll be delicate.
It's
You can get the
soft.
detail. It's soft and it looks really nice as well. You can actually also consider using the Afina to
Yeah.
do this as well if you want to have like that cotton texture to it also. So join us again maybe sometime this afternoon. We're going to do another live session and just kind of hang out some more. So if you watch this and it made you think of some more things that you want to ask us, maybe come back in another hour or two and we'll be back on here
Sure.
answering some more questions. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining the
Thank you for
live.
your time. It was so nice to chit chat and have like this more casual
Yeah, and if
style.
you like the casual style of like Q&A and just kind of hanging out and talking thread, let us know in the comments as well, because we've actually never done it so in such a relaxed
Yeah,
way
usually we
before.
have like the PowerPoint, everything ready to go.
Yeah, so let us know if you enjoyed this style of presentation. And if you
Okay.
did, then like we can definitely do some more in the future, and that helps us know as well what you guys kind of vibe, if you like the structured presentations or if you like the kind of more go with the flow type of presentations where we just answer questions. So all right, catch
Thank
us in a
you.
little bit again.
Okay,
Okay.
see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.